Jerningam here. It says the Battle of Conservatives, Prime Minister in Parliament suspended case. As you can see in the background there's army personnel there. So I'm going to press play. The army in Wiltshire, UK, with Boris Johnson.
There's another election-style photo opportunity for the election Parliament refused.
So there's the army in the UK in Wiltshire.
Troops in Wiltshire. While a predecessor in the office, Sir John Major, was sending his lawyer into the Supreme Court to accuse Boris Johnson of not telling the truth.
Sir John identifies various pieces of evidence which suggest that the decision was in fact motivated to a material extent by a desire to prevent Parliament from interfering with the Prime Minister's policies during that critical period.
Representing the government, Lord Keane said the court risked straying into politics if it passed judgment on the suspension of Parliament.
In my respectful submission, the applicants and the petitioners are inviting the courts into forbidden territory and into what is essentially a minefield, an ill-defined minefield.
The judges know some think they're trespassing on political decisions, and they've warned one lawyer to stick to legal arguments.
And if support will permit me, and make this point, that leaving with a no deal would be contrary to the terms of the Good Friday.
Too many people listening to you will just turn on. They will hear these points, these general points, Brexit and its effect on Northern Ireland, and it may come to an entirely the wrong conclusion, namely that this is what we are looking at. Now, don't abuse our politeness.
Back in Wiltshire, the Prime Minister told troops, "I'm hopeless with these drones. I always make them crash." Back in the Supreme Court, the justices wanted to know what he'd do if they decided he'd smashed convention and acted outside the law by suspending Parliament. The government's lawyers said he might do nothing. He might bring forward the Queen's speech in the next session of Parliament. He might just suspend Parliament again.
Essentially for Parliament and the executive in particular, to decide how to respond to that, considering the reasons that may be given by the court.
For Parliament how to respond, because Parliament wouldn't be there.
Week. Thank you again, one and all. The court is now adjourned.
Thank you. The Supreme Court decision will early next week, threatening a tumultuous distraction, just as the Prime Minister says his government could be close to pulling off a rewritten Brexit deal with the EU.
I don't want to exaggerate the progress that we are making, but we are making progress. And we need to, so people understand, we need to find a way whereby the UK can come out of the EU and really be able to do things differently, not remain under the control of the EU.
Yesterday, the Finnish Prime Minister, after a meeting with President Macron, said Britain must put a plan in writing within 10 days. Here, a government source said, "We'll do that when we're ready." The EU is saying it hasn't seen any proposals from the government. The government here is saying it's produced technical papers that kick around ideas. In the diplomatic jargon, they're called non-papers. They exist, but they don't commit. Craig Oliver was with David Cameron for his renegotiation of the UK's EU membership terms.
So the concern is that if you put forward a full proposal too early, it then gets put out there and lots of people are able to attack it and question it and tear it to pieces before it's even really got off. Hayward, who's the former cabinet secretary who's actually died recently, he always said you don't want to be in a situation where the rats get at it.
The deal the government seems to be sticking by EU rules to apply in Northern Ireland, but not in the rest of the United Kingdom, on areas like agriculture, some other products too. The EU believes their rules in these circumstances should apply across the whole board of products and on areas like tariffs too. Both sides will have to stretch a long way from their established positions if there's to be a deal.
We're not there yet. The gap between the two sides is really rather large at the moment. The British have not yet accepted that Northern Ireland would be aligned with the EU in more than a few areas like plant and animal health. The British have got to make a more generous offer and write it down on a bit of paper before anybody in the EU signs it. If they can write it down and make a sign, I think the EU may well respond with something that isn't what the British are asking for, but moves in that direction.
If you were putting a percentage of probability on this?
So the chances of a deal before October the 31st, probably about 25%, 30%.
One source close to the talks said the only person putting the chances a lot higher than that is Boris Johnson himself. which could, as all said, reflect natural optimism.
By Gary Gibbon, magician and political editor. Now, food suppliers and food banks have questioned whether they would be responsible for securing basic supplies for vulnerable people if a no-deal Brexit led to food shortages. This month, the Food and Rural Affairs Minister, Zach Goldsmith, said his department was not responsible for the supply of food and drink to the population in an emergency, adding that food suppliers should respond to any disruptions themselves. So, in a no-deal Brexit, who is responsible? Kieran reports.
The risk spelled out in the government's own yellowhammer document. In a no-deal Brexit, food prices could rise. Those on the lowest incomes will be disproportionately affected.
So, yeah, sort of things like pin meals and hygiene products.
Glasgow's Drumchapel Food Bank is already under strain. In case there was a no-deal Brexit.
No, not at the moment, no.
Demand is up. Whose job is it to step in?
I definitely think with food prices, food shortages, and just sort of trying to get around everyone, there is going to be a huge issue, I think, for sure.
So you expect potentially more people needing to come here?
Yeah, more people needing to use the service, maybe more frequently as well, I would say.
To provide the extra supplies that are needed.
I mean, that's what we're worried about.
If anything like the scenario in the government's own Yellowhammer document comes to pass, then who is ultimately responsible for feeding those people most in need? Well, the UK government said earlier this month it is not responsible for food supply in the event of an emergency. Expertise, it said, lies within the food industry. Well, today, some major figures from the food industry and those who help feed those most vulnerable are speaking out. In an open letter, they call on the UK government to stop passing the buck, saying they were dismayed when the government said it had no legal responsibility to help vulnerable people get the food they need in the event of a no-deal Brexit. They're demanding the UK government immediately make available hardships so vulnerable people can get the food they need. The letter is signed by FareShare, a huge charity that redirects surplus food, by the Food and Farming Alliance, Sustain, by the Federation of Wholesale Distributors, whose members serve almost 500,000 UK businesses, and by the Provision Trade Federation of dairy and meat companies, whose members include industry giants like Arla and Danone. The Director General told us today they have not had contingency discussions with the government.
If the government does believe that there are serious risks of those sorts of shortages, one would, I think, they wouldn't necessarily want to share them too widely, but we would hope that those plans are there, and I would have hoped that by now we might have been more closely drawn in to those kinds of discussions.
DEFRA, the Department for Environment, Food and Rural Affairs, said it is meeting regularly with industry to make sure they're prepared for leaving the EU, and that the food industry is well versed in dealing with scenarios that can impact food supply. From his farm in Knutsford, he supplies dairy products across the UK and has concerns.
It was an element of surprise when we saw that and heard that DEFRA had made a statement early in September that they were pushing the responsibility of any potential food shortages back to the supply base. In reality, we look into the detail of shortages of food, and in reality there probably won't be a shortage of food, but there may well be a shortage of foodstuffs. And that shortage will only push prices up.
Unlike in England, the governments in Scotland and Wales have put money aside for those who may struggle with food costs in a no deal. But they suggest they're not legally responsible for emergency food supplies either. So who really should take the responsibility?
Well, the government, yeah. It's their idea, so to push through for a no deal, so really they should be prepared for all the implications that come with that.
The government's advice is to prepare for Brexit, but some of those who feed the most vulnerable fear the government's own preparations are falling short.
Kieran Jenkins reporting. Now, councils across the country are preparing for Brexit as the UK gets closer to the end of the October deadline. Within the last hour, the authority that deals with Greater Manchester has released details of its current plans. Our North of England correspondent Claire Fallon is in Manchester tonight. Claire?
Well, this document has, as you say, only been published in the last 40 minutes or so. The subject is Greater Manchester Brexit Preparations Update Report. And it goes through some of the possible scenarios and what can we try and mitigate what it says are the risks, particularly if there were to be a no-deal Brexit. It says the Prime Minister has vowed to leave on the 31st of October, come what may, and says at the time of writing, the national situation remains extremely
So I'm
uncertain.
going to backdate it again, say May now,
If there were to
then October,
be a
then January.
no-deal exit from the EU, then they would try to put together a support package for any individuals who face the threat of redundancy and for businesses that were struggling if there were to be an economic downturn, as they put it. Talking about possible impacts on health and social care, the reliance on EU workers in that sector is a particular risk in Greater Manchester. And they go on to say that the government has announced a UK shared prosperity fund, which would be to try and deal with the shortfall that would be created from some of the funds that currently parts of the UK get from the European Union. They say that the design and implementation timeline was expected to have been announced for some time, that they thought it would have been announced in the September spending round, but that no formal announcement was made, creating a risk that there will be delays to the fund coming on stream. So I think we can take it from that there is a dig at the Conservative government in there, and bear in mind the timing of the release of this document, with the Conservative Party coming to Manchester in just over a week's time for party conference.
Well, proof is in the pudding, as one would say to me. I'm going to leave it for now for this video. I'm going to do another video in a minute, guys, so thank you for joining me. Please like, comment, subscribe, and share these videos with your friends, and let me know what you think about Brexit in the UK. Will it happen, or will it? Or I should hope it does, because I want our country to be free again, so we can do trading deals, and I want England to be back. That's all I want, really. I'm sorry if I'm rushing things at the moment and speaking very quick, but yeah. Thank you for joining me. Peace.